In. I think I see 5 board members here. First item on the agenda is the approval of the May 26 meeting. Could I have a motion and a second, please? I see moved by Durrett and seconded by Mr. Snyder. Okay. Any questions? If not, could we please vote? Okay. Motion's approved. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for procurement of consulting services for Indian Creek and H.E. Holmes Station's master plan by Dbe Frank, Director of Transit-Oriented Development. Debbie? Something.
I think the agenda shows that the first item up is 3.1 is resolution authorizing the approval of the center running bus rapid transit and not the Indian Creek. Do you have a different agenda? We have competing agendas.
I will defer to the in-house legal counsel. So,
yeah. And I think that just so everybody understands, the intention of switching them was, I think we have a board
no, that's
member
fine. I'll
that
just
may need to leave. So,
Davey, I'm sorry you got. Okay, let me back up. My apology. I go to number 4 on my agenda. First item is resolution authorizing approval of center running bus rapid transit at the locally preferred alternative, the LPA, for the Campbellton Road Community Investment Corridor Project. That'll be led by Marcus Arnold and Shelley Pearl. And Shelley, I apologize. I know that you're not that other person, so. I can't see that far this early, so. I think your mic's off.
Let's give it a second because there's a video, an online presence here. We want to make sure that everyone online can get the audio right.
Check.
No, the video is okay. Just the one.
Okay, so we're on. And yes, we've been told that the video actually will play, so you will be able to hear it. Okay, so again, good morning. Sorry for the confusion. Yes, this is Shelley Peart with the Interim Planning and Project Development Director. But Marcus Arnold is actually going to walk us through the presentation this morning for the LPA. Thank you so much. The proposed LPA.
Thank you, Shelley. Good morning. Just want to say good morning and thank the Chairman Pond and members of the committee, Mr. Greenwood and Mr. Renew, for the opportunity to present today. I want to provide some overview and our request for approval of the locally preferred alternative for the Campbellton Community Investment Corridor. Next slide. So this slide just gives an overview of our agenda today for the presentation. And so we've done quite a bit of work over the past few years on the project and want to highlight some of those key milestones and key takeaways from the project. Also to present our recommended LPA for the Campbellton project. Talk a little bit about center running BRT and the alignment and the features that we have proposed. the current project schedule, and then next steps and pathway forward on the project. Next slide. So this slide just gives a timeline of our process. We've been working through the planning process, which we're calling the alternatives analysis, since the fall of 2019. And so this includes a series of different analysis related to existing conditions, understanding the project purpose and need, what the goals of the project are, and then to identify viable transit alternatives that the team had studied throughout the process as well. So we had key milestones throughout the process to engage and present this information to the public, to stakeholders, elected officials throughout the project. So you'll see we really, the core of the work has occurred between September and February of this year. In February, we had recommended a locally preferred alternative of center running BRT. So we did look at both BRT alternatives, curb running BRT, as well as center running LRT. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the key takeaways from that analysis and how we got to this proposed locally preferred alternative. Next slide. So here are a few visuals of what we are recommending. So this is what we call center running BRT. So it would be operated within the center lanes of the existing roadway along Campbellton Road. And it would include center running platform stations throughout the corridor as well. So we are looking at improvement of travel time, also to have identified opportunities for wider sidewalks, increased access and safety, as well as premium features that the project would provide. We believe that this alternative would be able to be delivered quicker and more efficient at a lower cost as we compare it with our look at the LRT alternative. And we're calling this a gold standard BRT. So as you see, systems throughout the country may say they have BRT, but some may not have all the features that we are looking at. We are looking at a full-blown of features that provides efficient service as well as quality service for MARTA patrons. Next slide. So this is just a map of the corridor, and so we looked at an alignment between the MARTA Oakland City Station heading southwest along Campbellton Road, and it would connect to the Greenbrier Parkway right there at Greenbrier Mall, and then connect up to the existing Barge Road parking ride. So we're looking at 9 stations that are proposed. We also are looking at 92% of dedicated lanes. So we typically with BRT, you at least want to have 50% of dedication. We have identified 92%. So there's definitely an opportunity here as well. Connecting key destinations throughout the corridor, Fort McPherson, Greenbrier Mall areas as well. Also, this improvement we're proposing would provide 18 minutes of travel time. So that's a 35% reduction in travel time compared to the existing Route 83 that's in operation today, which is roughly around 30-minute travel time currently. As I mentioned, also 2 safety improvements as well, and we're projecting a ridership per day of 8,800 passengers. Next slide. So what the LPA will achieve is it will support the alignment that we just covered, that connection between MARTA, Oakland City, Fort McPherson, and the redevelopment opportunities there, as well as the Greenbrier Mall. It also supports, we're looking to seek entry into the FTA's Small Starts program, would be a next step if the LPA is approved. So we definitely want to continue that process as well. It also supports MARTA's funding plan, which includes the More MARTA Atlanta program, as well as the 15 amendment commitments that are in place for high capacity improvement along Campbellton Road. And then it also supports this continued coordination at a local and regional level with the City of Atlanta, GDOT, the ATL, as well as ARC. Next slide. So now I want to just take a few minutes to give you all an example from a BRT service that's operated currently in Richmond, Virginia. I believe it opened in 2019. And so there's some similar features that we really want to highlight to give you all a visual. So please pay attention to things such as level boarding, station amenities, and there are some center running elements along this corridor as well.
a new type of service for the Richmond area. It's high quality, high capacity, rapid transit service. We are still using buses, so rubber tires, absolutely, but we use a lot of the same design features like a light rail or a subway would that makes us faster, makes us more reliable, and we're able to provide more frequent service.
Awesome. And what would you say makes it different than just your regular bus service?
Well, there are a number of key design and technology features that make the Pulse totally different from anything else that we operate. And we're standing on one of those things that makes it different. It's the platform. So you're able to have platform level boarding where it's very easy to get on and off the bus through both the front and the back doors. That means as well that the operator is able to dock seamlessly and then keep on moving after everyone gets on and off. There's something else that's missing from the bus itself, and it's a fare box. So you're going to pay for your bus fare before you ever get on, and that happens right here at the platform at the ticket vending machine. We still accept cash coin, we'll issue change, and we will accept credit and debit.
Thank you. So just wanted to highlight some of the features that we are proposing. Also, too, we are looking at transit signal priority along the corridor to allow the vehicle to efficiently operate on schedule and on time, as well as some other station features related to real-time next vehicle, ticket vending machines, and other key amenities at each of the stations. Next slide. So the next couple of slides, we just wanted to cover, again, our community outreach. We had a robust community outreach effort since 2019. And again, we've coordinated ongoing with stakeholders throughout the process, as well as the public at key milestones where we presented existing conditions, understanding project goals, also to introduce potential transit alternatives, the results of the evaluation criteria, and all these different milestones. We went to the public, both in person as well as virtually, understanding some limitations with the pandemic, wanted to provide as much opportunity to get out to the public. So these are just some of the initial meetings we had and some of the key summary comments that we received related to, project delivery, wanting to minimize impacts and disruptions along the corridor, looking for short-term needed improvements to infrastructure along the corridor as well. Next slide. And this just kind of wraps up. So in summer of last year, we completed the evaluation of the alternatives, and the results showed that there was both support for both the BRT and LRT alternatives, but there were some key design features we felt that provided an opportunity to really look at a center running BRT, kind of merging some of the key feedback, some of the key takeaways we got from each of the alternatives. Based on our outreach and our presentation of the recommended locally preferred alternative in February, we did get some feedback on that and decided to go back out, provide more information, really listen to the community, to stakeholders, to understand their questions, their issues, their concerns. So we had a series of additional virtual meetings, a bus tour, open house, and a couple roundtables with stakeholders and business community as well to have that dialogue and get that input. Next slide. So our tactics was really canvassing. We did quite a bit of canvassing throughout the corridor. And when we say canvassing, we went out and provided information on the project, went to the community centers, the library, the high ridership bus stops, rail stations and things to really disseminate information, get input as well. We used that tactic as well to conduct a survey. So the summer of last year, we conducted a survey over a 3-month effort to get input on the proposed alternatives, the features of each of the alternatives as well, and received roughly about, I believe it was 938 surveys total. But majority of surveys we received were in person. So it was about 600 paper surveys we received, essentially onboard buses at the rail station within the corridor. So it's heavily weighted on the folks who live, work, and visit the corridor. So really want to get that input as part of that survey effort. Next slide. And these are just some of the survey results. About 50% of respondents had mentioned live in the study area, with 15% living there over 20 years. And mostly were those who reported to be employed, commuters, as well as retirees. We did receive some input on the actual transit mode alternatives, and 45% had noted preference of BRT, where 43% preferred preference of LRT. So, and then about 10% just had additional suggestions or recommendations outside of those. So really just kind of a split there on that, but definitely too wanted to really understand not only the transit mode, but what improvements can help make the project successful as well. And 90% had mentioned a greater need for infrastructure improvements, access to and from the service for both pedestrians and cyclists was key in order to make the project successful and address the needs of the community. Next slide. So this matrix provides a summary of our performance metrics. So as I mentioned, our alternatives analysis was a series of technical evaluation on all these key measures. And so just to highlight a few on the table, as I mentioned, the trip time really, as you can see, provided a savings compared to the current Route 83 as well at 18 minutes and 16 for LRT. But also too, wanted to compare the ridership as well as lane dedication. And the more dedicated lanes you have, the more your service can be reliable and on time as well. As I mentioned, new bike facilities and sidewalks. So when those were identified for all the alternatives, for Center Run and BRT, it was 6 miles of sidewalks and 4 miles of dedicated bike lanes. Speed reduction is really a safety measure. With the dedicated bike lanes and the right in, right out requirements for center running alignment, that would help slow down existing traffic. So that provides a safety improvement. And then number of driveway closures. So one of the key differences with the LRT is it will require additional right-of-way in order to fit in the envelope of the corridor, and would require some driveway closures for businesses that would have multiple driveways. And so just to provide more safety in and out of those businesses. And finally, the cost as well. So we develop construction and operating cost estimates for the alternatives. And so for the center running BRT, we're looking at $300 million. Now that includes all the additional opportunities for all the additional investment along the corridor, infrastructure improvements, new sidewalks, new streetscapes, and all that to support that. And the light rail was 450 plus, which also would include, or this does include, the need for additional, a new maintenance facility as well. So that's just a difference there. Ongoing operating costs, you see the difference there as well, and the impact comparing the modes. And then year of completion, like I said, project delivery was something we heard throughout the process, and we're estimating for the BRT at year 2028 implementation, and the light rail is 2030s is where we've identified. And then finally, cost per rider. This is just a function of understanding the cost to implement versus the estimated ridership, and this is just a measure that as we look to pursue federal funding to understand what that benefit is in order to implement the system. Next slide. So these are just the key benefits again. More money available to implement BRT, more opportunities to invest in all the supportive infrastructure along the corridor and in Southwest Atlanta. Also to, again, faster service than you see out there on the street to get folks to and from services, jobs, and other education opportunities as well along the corridor and connecting into the MARTA system. Mobility choices, so more opportunities for connectivity and less reliance on automobile to access transit. And exceptional design, again, we're recommending a lot of features to make this a premium transit service that you would experience similar to rail as well. And then quicker completion, as I mentioned, to be able to construct and fund the implementation of the project. Next slide. So this slide provides a summary of our cost and funding plan. Essentially, we're looking at a total project cost of $300 million. We would look to seek federal funding through the CIG Small Starts discretionary grant program, and that would require a 50% local match that we're looking at of more MARTA sales tax. So that's essentially our plan if with LPA approval moving forward to continue that process as well. Next slide. So this just provides a project timeline that I described earlier. We're at this decision point now of requesting approval of the locally preferred alternative. Our next step would be to request entry into the FTA CIG Small Starts program and get that piece of the project moving forward into project development. We would start conducting environmental studies through NEPA, as well as continuing our design activities and construction that would occur roughly around the, 2025 year range as far as those activities being scheduled to begin. Next slide. So this is our pathway forward. The mega grant, there's a mega grant that was submitted as well by the City of Atlanta. As we mentioned, the City of Atlanta is our partner, has been our partner throughout the process as we move the project forward, but they did submit a grant recently on our behalf in order to include center running BRT. So we are looking at different funding opportunities as well, and we'll coordinate once information is back as far as how that grant has performed and if it's awarded. Also, too, again, we'll initiate additional design activities, coordinate with FTA on a NEPA checklist, and then entry into project development. And one thing I want to emphasize is continued community outreach. We're in the planning phase now, but we will continue to engage the community throughout the process as we get into environmental design and construction and other phases of the project. Let's see. I think we can flip. There's an additional slide I just wanted to highlight. I think before we get to the end, we had as well, just wanted to share with the committee, and we looked at, just want to give a visual to the vehicle types. So we're looking at streetcar. LRT was one alternative, and this is just an example from the Atlanta streetcar. And then we are proposing electric BRT for the proposed LPA. This is just an example from Los Angeles, from LA Metro. So would require charging of vehicles at key destinations, but also to, more environmental friendly, quieter experience for customers as well. Good, flip back to the presentation. Next slide. So again, we're requesting from the committee approval of the recommended LPA today, and and also to move forward with FTA CIG application process, and with this request to move forward to board adoption of the LPA and the request as well. Next slide. And that's essentially our recommended request today. And I guess with that, I just want to thank everyone again for your time, and thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Great presentation. Could I get a motion and a second for this resolution before we take questions?
Mr. Pond, before you do that, based on what you mentioned earlier, I went back and looked at the advertisements for the agenda, and it looks like what was advertised to the public does have this item as number 4 and not number 2. So I would recommend the first motion we make is to amend the agenda to move this up to number 2 before we take any action on it.
I move to amend the agenda to make this item number 2.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Could we have a show of hands for approval? Motion's approved.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Peter.
I move approval of the resolution.
Okay.
Sorry, forgot.
I think we have a motion by Hartage and a second by Frederickson. So, Friesen.
Tyreen,
So now we'll take questions.
I tried to second it and I clicked no. Can you? Yeah. Can you move me?
I think the electronic drives the first and seconds on these things. Okay, questions for the presenter?
Yeah. Marcus, you talked a lot about community outreach, and I certainly am comfortable that y'all did great work getting out in the community. Can you talk a little bit about any conversations you've had with City Hall, City Council?
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. We, as a MARTA team, have continued to engage with the City of Atlanta, both at a staff level, but as well as with a committee and council as well. And our executive staff have been in continued coordination as well on that, and just making sure that the city is comfortable with our recommendations and to be able to have a dialogue and make sure we're addressing everything related to the outreach as well.
And I would just add, too, there's an intergovernmental agreement that establishes certain protocols as we advance a project like this, and we have followed all of those protocols, providing notice to the City of Atlanta, and those letters are attached to the agenda item in your packet. Also, we attended the City Council's Transportation Committee yesterday. It wasn't on the agenda, but we made ourselves available should they have questions. There were none by the Transportation Committee members. So there's, as Marcus said, there's been excellent dialogue and following the protocols in place.
And just one final point, the Program Governance Committee is comprised of folks from City Hall who also are aware of where we're headed. We're unanimous in their support of this directive or this direction. We further sent some documentation on the 15th and as recently as last week, outlining where we were headed and standing by for any questions or concerns, and of which there were none.
Is that good, Thomas? Okay. Ms. Blakely?
So in that regard, I have a couple of different questions. So has the city formally said that they are in full support of BRT?
I think we could,
So the city, as part of its application for the mega grant funds, that application reflected a center-running BRT, and so that is what we have on the record for the city's formal position on the project, is making application to the federal government for a mega grant application on a center-running BRT project with an operating segment further west.
Okay, thank you. That's question one. In regards to the delivery date that you guys showed, you showed a definitive 2028 for BRT and then a generic 2030s for LRT. Why did you guys look to see what, and I understand that cost and construction deliverable times, all those things are a factor, but did we actually look into LRT and say, okay, it's 2 years out further than BRT, or is it 5 years out? Like, I just want to understand why we were definitive in one mode and not the other.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ms. Blakely. Earlier in the process, we did identify at an early phase, between 8 to 10 years when we started the study, to identify for light rail in 2030. This was assumption of, obviously we would need to have additional federal funding in order to support meeting those deadlines. I know the nature of trying to obtain federal funding would be a little bit more difficult with LRT, with it being requiring a new starts application, which is for more mega projects, higher cost projects as well. So there's more competition in the pipeline throughout the U.S. in order to achieve trying to successfully get that funding. So we didn't want to mislead and be as definitive. Compared to the BRT, we've seen greater success, a lot of opportunities, funding available in order to move it forward at that 2028 timeline.
Okay, and then to your point, funding. So what happens if we don't get the FTA grants? What is the plan B to support this program?
I think our plan B would be that we would look at BRT without as much as of the investment along the corridor. We can still produce a fast, comfortable ride along the corridor. We can still, give the people what they need in terms of better transportation. I think we would then have to partner with the city and others to continue the development efforts along the corridor, but we could still provide that. We would have to look at something like doing it locally and maybe even trying to get more partners, but I do believe that we could still get it. I think the initial numbers that when we ran them for just BRT along the corridor was between 100 to 130 million, something around there. So I still believe that we would be able to have BRT along the corridor.
Okay, I just want to ensure that in the event that we don't get the grant funding, that there is a plan and that, you know, we continue to, even if we don't get the funds, that we continue to move forward to make sure that this entire program comes to fruition.
Yes.
So, okay, good to hear. And then one last thing, in terms of outreach, please continue to be transparent and open and receptive, especially to the community. This has larger than life impacts for not only them, but the surrounding regions. So just please continue in that.
We definitely will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Scott?
Thank you. I think, I couldn't hear you, Ms. Blakely, a lot. I think she asked part of the question I had, but in regards to the community, exactly how many community outreach meetings have we had since how many?
So we've had we had a kickoff meeting in the fall of 2019. We went back out to the community, I believe.
Specifically, I'm sorry.
Oh, just the
this
specific,
year,
this year?
Since we actually had a meeting at the Minister's Church. How many meetings have we had since then in the community?
Oh, since the church, 3 meetings. So we had an open house as well as a community roundtable and business roundtable as well. Yep. So, yep. So yeah, 3 additional meetings since we had the meeting at Mount Carmel Baptist Church.
And what is the amount of the average attendees? How many attendees average from the community?
So total for those 3 events was roughly about 125 attendees. Again, those were in-person attendees for those events.
And Marcus and Greg, if you could talk to the tactics we use to drive participation in these events.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
And the question I was asking is to talk to the tactics that we use to drive participation to those events.
And along those lines, my next question was going to be, did we have a significant amount of stakeholders out of the community? Businesses, constituents?
So I think the best attendance out of those 3 meetings that we have had since we were at the church on March 31st, I think the best attendance was at an open house that we held at Junction 2800. That's the Mary Parker Foundation out on Campbellton. We had about 70 people come throughout the afternoon. We gave them kind of the kitchen sink approach. We had all of the past information about this project. We had 30-some boards. We had all of the project team available. As far as promoting that event, our tactics throughout have been digital, as far as email campaigns to stakeholders and elected officials and community organizations to spread our messaging, all of MARTA's social media channels. As far as printed collateral and canvassing, we generally do postcards on the bus system. We have canvassers who are at the station at Oakland City, at the major bus stops throughout the corridor. We do A-frames, we do yard signs at the key intersections. So that's generally the suite of tactics that we use. I think generally there has been, I think, almost a little bit of fatigue. I think there are some folks who are kind of tired of talking about it, but then there are other folks who want to see much more engagement. And so I don't think anyone can claim that they have not been aware of our efforts on this project. So.
And that was my concern, that we've had a variety of stakeholders that have participated, as well as elected officials, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Chair Scott? Okay. I have one question. I'm not sure who to direct this to, but The small starts program that this project fits nicely with is probably the best opportunity to get federal funding. And I'm not sure the rail option would qualify for the small starts program, so I'd like to throw that question to one of you guys to my left, I think, maybe Marcus, I don't know.
Yeah, I can probably start and then have Mr. Renew give more details. But yeah, small starts is currently the current requirements, the BRT's cost fit within those thresholds of cost. So anything above, obviously 400 million would require going into a new starts program. And so the BRT is definitely designed to compete well for it. And you'll see as more recent small starts awards have been for bus rapid transit systems as well. So we feel like this project is ready for that application as well.
Any other? Yes, Mr. Rivers.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions and a comment. I had the opportunity to ride the 83 from Oakland all the way around and loop it back around, and so I do understand a little bit about what the community is faced with in terms of how that's going to impact them. And I'm glad to hear that y'all made a very concerted effort to get the stakeholders involved in it. But there's still, like you said, there's still work that needs to be done because there are people who may not come out into these spaces and hear what's going on. But once you start doing some things that's visible, then everybody shows up and then they say, well, we didn't know. But we want to make sure that we do a great job and continue to do that. So my question has to do with two things. One is you have a 2028 completion. That's 6 years from where we're going to move forward with this. All right, and I just want to make sure that we're clear that we have to make sure we hit these scheduled timelines in order to make that happen. Because for us to come back in the next 5 years and say, well, now we got 2 years delay, will just exacerbate the problem that our community feels like they're not getting these services that we promised. All right, so let's make sure we keep that on the scope as we move forward. All right, but my question is the electric buses. Was that something that was talked about at the very beginning when you were doing the BRT?
Yes. So when we presented the BRT alternative at the time, we did include information regarding electric bus fleet as well. And really what we were trying to do is, the difficult part with BRT is sometimes it gets put in the same category as regular bus, but there's so many different features that the BRT vehicles provide, so we did provide that information as well.
Great. Well, I'm excited about what we're going to do with this because this will be another example that our community can see how these express BRT transit projects can impact the community. And we don't have one yet to be seen, but I'm looking forward to us having more to showcase how this does really to make a difference. But
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frosson. Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Pons. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was thorough. I think you covered all the major topics. Had a comment and then I had a follow-up question. I'm one of the City of Atlanta representatives, so I've met with and talked to MARTA leadership about this project for quite a while. Had a lot of questions about the advantages, pros and cons of both the center lane running BRT and light rail. Obviously, there was opinion on both sides, but ultimately, after all of the research was presented to me and my colleagues from the City of Atlanta, we were convinced that the center lane BRT is the best overall option. To Ms. Blakely's point, I'm very much interested in the ancillary improvements, development of the area. The mode of transportation, the public mode of transportation is important. I'm glad we are focusing on improving that. For me, just as a matter of practical function, I don't really see a lot of difference between the electric bus, center lane bus, electric bus versus a light rail. I do, however, see a huge difference in not being able to do the overall community infrastructure development. If you don't have the money to do that, improving the transit doesn't really help a whole lot. So for me, the big compelling point, the compelling selling point of the whole thing was the improvement of the community. That area has been overlooked and underserved. It has not gotten the economic development dollars that other parts of the city have gotten. I believe that MARTA putting that money in, assuming that we get the federal funds, that will make a huge difference in the future of that community, notwithstanding anything about changing the transit. That obviously will help, but the real important key, and I want to make sure that we as a board and the MARTA as an organization focuses on the economic development of that area as a part of this overall transit program. So with that, I did want to talk about, we're in an inflationary time period. Everything is costing more to do. And when we were looking at this project, we were looking at it as a project based on 2019, 2020 dollars, 2021. Now we've changed and everything in development is more expensive. So have we taken that into account in terms of asking for money, planning this out, and do you think we can hit the mark with our current budget to actually accomplish the development? That's my question.
So at this planning phase, we've developed cost estimates that not only are at current year dollars, but also what we call year of expenditures. So we look at what the dollars would be over the life of implementing the project, through construction, and have identified contingencies as well to factor in the unknowns as, obviously the economy and dollars change over time as well. So we definitely want to continue to refine that as we move forward.
I just want to add that, yes, we have included escalation costs and contingencies in our assumed budget right now. But just as a word of caution, as everybody knows, yes, inflation is continuing to rise. There will be things that I'm sure that we can do over the life of the development of the project to try to control or to try to get ahead of things. But again, we can't stand here in the planning phase and say that, yes, this is the exact dollar amount that it's going to be. I don't think anybody can do that because we're just too early on. But we will do everything that we can to make sure that we can meet the mark that we've set.
Okay. All right. Thank you both.
Okay. Any other questions? With that, I'd like to call the question. Could we please vote? The motion's approved.
Thank you.
The
And if I
next
may-
item on the agenda.
If I may, Chairman, just want to thank the team for all the work that they've done over the years to work with the community, to work with a variety of stakeholders, and to bring this to this milestone. Of course, July 14th is the final decision by the board, but a word of thanks for all the good work that's been done.
Thank you, guys. Yes.
I might make a comment about what Mr. Snyder said. Is from an elected official standpoint, the impact something like this has on people that may not ever get on this bus is enormous. And what he has said is exactly true. The improvements along those sidewalks and the economic development in that area, this project has a chance to make an enormous impact in that area. And you were right on with that, because there are people that maybe not have paid any attention to this yet, but will as you begin more and more about what happens on the sidewalks and on the economic development or transit-oriented development around this stuff is enormous. And I think that's a point sometimes we overlook when we're looking at the impact this has on local businesses and local residents. So anyway, I want to thank you for that comment, because I had not heard anybody mention it before, and really, quite honestly, had not thought about it that much. But you're right dead on with that, and so I want to make sure that gets pointed out. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Colin?
Thank you, Mr. Floyd. And just to follow up on that, the notion that we've achieved this milestone and we're just going to move forward, that I just want to clarify that MARTA will continue to have that open door policy. Chair Scott and I have met with Reverend Fleming. I've been back and forth with him with letters and phone calls, and the communication with the community will continue, because as you say, those questions will continue to arise as people start to take notice of what's happening. So the door remains open.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll go back to the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of consulting services for Indian Creek and H.E. Holmes Master Plan by Debbie Frank. Debbie, sorry to push you back.
Oh, no worries, thank you. We will get through this still. So thank you, Chair Pond, Chair Floyd, committee members, Mr. Greenwood, and Mr. Renew. I have two resolution items before you today. You may recall last year the board authorized the solicitation of proposals for master planning services at our Kensington Station, Indian Creek Station, and H.E. Holmes Station to help advance transit-oriented development. And in November of last year, we approved the contract award to Perkins & Will to begin master planning services for our Kensington Station, and that work is underway. Well, I'm back today to ask for a contract award for advancing TOD master planning services for H.E. Holmes and Indian Creek. And the resolution is authorizing the award of contract for the procurement of consulting services for Indian Creek and H.E. Holmes Master Plan, RFP P48713. Next slide, please. So why TOD master planning? So in addition to being a pathway to implement TOD, it provides an opportunity for us to engage in with the community in the visioning process. It allows for us to have a MARTA-led rezoning to advance TOD. And actually, if you guys recall, DeKalb County really requested us to move forward with master planning on first for Kensington Station and then seek the rezoning to support that plan. So that's what we're doing. You'll see the next item that'll be before you today is for board approval to issue an RFP for TOD at our Indian Creek Station. So going through the master planning on the front side or the first will allow for us to pull together what we believe to be a pretty awesome RFP for TOD at Indian Creek. And then, as we always talk about, the increase in ridership and non-fare revenue that will be generated from our TOD projects in itself. Next slide, please. So MARTA's TOD strategic objectives, as I stated, is to definitely increase transit ridership, but we also want to promote a sustainable, affordable, and growing future for all of Metro Atlanta. We look to create a return on that initial transit investment that was made to create the system through enhanced passenger revenue and ground leases. Next slide, please. Our design goals for Indian Creek and H.E. Holmes TODs will stay consistent with our design goals for our system, for our TODs throughout the system. We look to create density that is relative to the surrounding communities. We definitely want to see a mix of uses. No single use should dominate the community development, that the community investments that are being made. We definitely want to promote public open space. We think the opportunity to create places where people can gather is very important. And then finally, we are leaning very heavily into social infrastructure. We have the MARTA Market, Artbound, and Station Soccer. And actually, next month, we will celebrate the grand opening of Station Soccer at our Kensington Station. Next slide, please. So a little bit about our Indian Creek Station. It's about 52 acres. It is on our blue line. Actually, it is the end of the line station on the east. As I stated earlier, we are in need of a rezoning to support TOD. Kensington Station is where we kicked off the system-wide station rehabilitation, so it was great to celebrate that there at our Kensington Station. And most recently, we partnered with Global Growers Network to create a small farm at Indian Creek Station. It's about a half acre, under a half acre farm there, and the produce that's being produced, that will be produced there, I guess I should say, will actually be sold through our MARTA Market. And I know many of you are aware of new developments that are occurring just south of our station with the Kaplan townhome development. They're set to hopefully break ground next month. And then most recently, we had the announcement of Electric Owl Film Studios just south of the Indian Creek Station. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we will do, we always talk about not going out and reinventing the wheel, so we will definitely examine recent plans that have been completed for our Indian Creek Station and just really make sure that the recommendations that were established from those plans still hold true. Next slide, please. And looking at our HE Home Station, we have about 22 acres there. It is also on the blue line, but it's at the end of our west line on the blue line, end of our station on the west line. The station itself is within the opportunity zones. You may recall that the board approved us moving forward with TOD at 7 stations within the city of Atlanta that actually sits within the opportunity zone. So we're really excited about the opportunity that this particular federal program will present for HE Homes. The board approved us, as I stated earlier, moving forward with RFP for TOD at HE Homes. We do need a rezoning. We will be working with the community and the council member to advance that. We do have one of 7 MARTA markets located at HE Homes. And then you may recall back in 2018-19, we partnered with the city of Atlanta, Invest Atlanta specifically, to create iVillage. It is a small business incubator at the station. And finally, HE Homes is a future location for station soccer. Next slide, please. As with Indian Creek, we will definitely review past plans that have been created for HE Homes, look at the recommendations that were established, and make sure that those recommendations still hold true for today and in the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. So I do want to just highlight the timeline and the process that we took to reach the conclusion to advance the contract award today. The RFP for proposals was advertised in December of last year. Proposals were due in February of this year, and we actually received 6 proposals, all responsive. We received proposals from Collaborative, Gensler, HKS, Stantec, TVS Design, and WSP. Our source evaluation committee convened and began the selection review process in March. In April, the committee voted to advance HKS and WSP in the selection process. In May, we had some additional information that we needed to receive from those 2 firms, as well as their best and final offer. In late May, the source evaluation committee voted to recommend contract award to HKS for master planning services at our HE Home Station at a contract amount of $448,000, and the source evaluation committee voted to recommend contract award to WSP for Indian Creek Station master planning at a contract award of $385,500. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the Indian Creek master planning team led by WSP. Other supporting firms will be Hummingbird, Perez, and Bay Urban Economics. The Dbe Goal for this particular master planning service was set at 18%. WSP and its team exceeded that participation at 22.6%. I listed just a few of the master planning experiences by WSP, specifically WSP, and what really stood out for us was their involvement in the I-20 East Transit-Oriented Development Community Plan. We believe their involvement in that effort, their involvement in DeKalb County, will allow for them to quickly mobilize and move forward with this master planning effort. Next slide, please. And for HE Homes master planning team led by HKS, they are joined by Sycamore Consulting and Perez. Again, the Dbe Goal was 18%. They were able to, with their consultants, reach 20.67%. And I've listed here as well for HKS some of their experience in TOD master planning. Urban Creek Quarry Yards, we know it today as the Microsoft site just across from our Bankhead station. that was definitely intriguing to the group. And then the other piece is ironic that they were the chosen firm to work with Soccer in the Streets to develop the master plan for station soccer at our HE home station. So they work closely with Soccer in the Streets and the City of Atlanta Design Studio for roughly a year's time during the time that the studio was located off of Cascade Road, rather. And so we believe this too will allow for HKS to mobilize fairly quickly and be able to move forward with the master planning for us at HE Homes. Next slide, please. So our scope of work and timeline, we're being somewhat aggressive. We've identified the master planning process itself being roughly a 6 months process. If things are able to really kick off in August of this year, we're looking at a conclusion by February of 2023. Pretty much a 4-phase process with public involvement, number one, concept plan, implementation, and then followed by deliverables to us. There is the rezoning that we will seek February of 2023. Our application could go in a little sooner than that, but we won't know until we really get into the process itself. And then we hope to issue RFP for TOD between March and April of next year for both stations. Next slide, please. So this is a resolution, again, authorizing the award of contract for procurement of consulting services for Indian Creek and HE Home Station. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Could I get a motion and a second? Let's see, we have a motion by Mr. Dewart and a second by Mr. Snyder. All right, any questions for Ms. Frank? Mr. Snyder.
I think Jim was first.
Okay, sorry.
Hi, Debbie.
Hey, Jim.
Is your other microphone still on up there? The handheld one?
I don't have the hand.
Okay. I was hearing an echo earlier, so I was thinking it might have been picking up. I just want to say how impressed I am when I look at the list of firms who proposed, that we're not going with Gensler and TVS, for instance, two firms that I'm very familiar with. Tells me that we had a great choice to make here.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for the presentation, and I'm looking forward to voting for the resolution. I just wanted to say I'm impressed.
Okay. I'm going to go in the order of Mr. Frierson.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie, for the presentation. Once again, we are keeping our eye on all that goes on with our transit station, and I am excited about what's getting ready to happen at both stations at the end of our transit line. And the Indian Creek station has so much potential, so we're glad to see that there's a master plan that's going to incorporate all these things in it. And I'm hoping that, once again, that you'll be able to bridge the zoning issue that may come up when it comes to these projects.
Yes.
So what I'm understanding is that the RFP will be ready to present somewhere in March and April of 2023?
That's what we will be pushing for,
Okay,
absolutely.
So, all right. Well, I just want to make sure that everybody that's involved and understands that when that time comes, we want to be able to see that presented before the board. And so whatever needs to happen, that's what we need to see happen. It's long overdue, and it's our time to do this, and we're just excited to see it happen. So we just want to see it happen, all right?
Staff is really excited,
Okay,
too.
all right. That's all I have to share. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Chairman Pons. I'm actually going to segue on something Mr. Frierson said. I was asking or wanted to ask about the rezoning of both Indian Creek area and the HE owns station. So is DeKalb County already aware of and on board to get this done very quickly? And same question kind of for the City of Atlanta, because just from personal experience, I know in the City of Atlanta, it takes a while to get rezoning done. So just want to make sure that that won't be a holdup for the process, and we can go ahead and preemptively tell them that this is coming down the pipe, and maybe they can go ahead and sort of get these things moving. But just kind of speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So DeKalb County is very much aware. As I stated earlier, they recommended that we go through a master planning process at Kensington Station. We had gone before the commission. We had submitted an application for rezoning of our Kensington Station. right before the height of the pandemic. And the community and the commissioners really encouraged us to go through a master planning process first and then come back to submit the rezoning application. And part of that for them, they wanted to really just make sure we were, kind of getting it right, that our density or rezoning request was at the highest and best use for the station. And we appreciate that because a lot of time has passed since most recent plans in the area. So DeKalb County is walking step in with us throughout the process for Kensington and will be the same for Indian Creek. For the city of Atlanta, we were fortunate to work with Councilman Hillis on a rezoning of our Bankhead station. And this was another station that was in line for us to do a rezoning. So we've been pretty much making a concerted effort, we being MARTA, to make sure we have the zoning in place to support TOD so we're not taking time away from a developer advancing the, going vertical because they got to go through that process. So where we can go in and get the appropriate zoning in place, that's what we're doing. And so HE Homes was another station on the list. And so we've actually reached out to the zoning director for the city and just shared with her that we would be coming before the board today, hopefully, knock on wood, positive vote in next month on the 14th. And then we'll sit down with her and try to coordinate with Council Lady Boone because we would love for the city to sponsor the rezoning for us at HE Homes, similar to what was done for us at Bankhead.
Right, great, thank you.
See no questions.
Chair Pond?
Ms. Blakely.
This is a truly exciting and transformative project. Question in regards to the public involvement. I see that it's scheduled to start in August, which is literally like next
Excuse
month.
me, Ms. Blakely, you need to
Yes.
talk into your microphone. We can't hear you. Your mouth, you're looking that way, but the microphone's, there you go. Thank you.
So in regards to the public involvement and I do appreciate the aggressive schedule, what is the plan to make sure that we're engaging the appropriate stakeholders as well as constituents?
Yes, so we're fortunate in this particular case that we're looking to see how things work out for us with Kensington. That process is underway. We've created an interactive website that launched last Friday. We are engaging with different, like the elected officials are also being engaged so they could push out the information to their constituents. We are engaged, obviously, with the planning department. The planning department for the DeKalb County has a mailing list of some 52,000 folks. So we're being very intentional in how we try to get the information out. Hence, kind of teaming up with some folks who have done this before in these particular areas because of their database of folks will make a difference. But, we have things posted on MARTA's social media channels. Our planning firms, they shared with us that they would place it on their social media channels. So between that and the various, town hall meetings that we'll hold here and there, I think we'll do very well. We are really excited. We will actually have a pop-up tent at our grand opening for the Kensington Station Soccer. That's an opportunity for us to engage the community there. So we would be looking for different ways to do similar things like that in the city of Atlanta and for Indian Creek. I don't think there will be a limit of opportunities to get out and talk about planning for us. We're definitely going to shoot for as many ways of getting the word out.
Chair Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. I have a comment as well as a question. First of all, I personally sit in on the commissioner zoning meeting, so I am aware that they are consistently talking about zoning and the issues concerning Indian Creek. I know that there has been a movie studio built there, so at Indian Creek, and it's the movie industry is looking forward to the TOD, the work, live, play environment. Has all of this been taken into consideration when we talk about this RFP? That movie industry is going to be huge in that area.
Yeah, so what we typically do when we put together our RFPs for TOD, we try to highlight everything that's going on so that there's things that may trigger a certain developer to say, this is what I would love to be next to or near. We also try to point out, the development potential by way of zoning. So to be able to say we have the appropriate zoning in place to support the level of density that we want to see. But yeah, we try to highlight other plans. So we want our potential development partners to do as much research on the front end to understand the development potential that exists, to understand a little bit about the area that they're, the area of around this particular station, because no one single station for us is the same. So we have to try to tell the story about each of the stations so people can get a clear picture of the potential.
Thank you. And lastly, I would like to echo the sentiments of Mr. Brierson.
Yes.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See there, no other questions. Could we call the question and please vote? The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for transit-oriented development at the Indian Creek Station. That'd be led by Debbie Frank again.
Yes, and I'll be quick on this one, Commissioner, since we spent a lot of time talking about Indian Creek already. So again, this resolution is to authorize the solicitation of proposals for transit-oriented development at our Indian Creek Station. Next slide, please. Again, with our TOD strategy, we want to increase transit ridership, promote a sustainable, affordable, and growing future for all of Metro Atlanta, and generate a return on that initial investment that MARTA made when it created the system. And these, strategies, objectives were identified in MARTA's TOD guidelines that were adopted by the board in 2010, and they're still holding strong for us. Next slide, please. Indian Creek Station, I will just, again, it's 52 acres, quite a bit of land area. So the idea here for us is to make sure that we're creating a TOD opportunity, speaking to Ms. Scott's point, that is definitely reflective of what is happening and will be happening around the Kensington Station. The Indian Creek Station. Now, the one thing that I will say is that of the 3 master plans that we are completing, 2 of them, both Kensington and H.E. Homes, already have board approval to advance TOD. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to do here is to just make sure Indian Creek has that same standing and we're able to issue that RFP fairly quickly as well. Next slide, please. Design goals for Indian Creek staying the same. We want to make sure density is relative to the surrounding areas, a great mix of uses, great public space, and then social infrastructure. So, Artbound is going to be very important for us. The fact that we have global growers that's introducing a farm there is pretty unique. So we think we'll be very well positioned to see probably other social infrastructures being introduced from this master planning effort that we'll undertake. Next slide, please. Again, just for us, we will definitely revisit past plans, and hopefully the most recently, the newly minted master plan that we'll create will also guide the development for TOD here at the station. Next slide, please. And this is it. So we're just asking for authorization to solicit proposals for transit-oriented development at our Indian Creek Station. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I get a motion on a second, please?
So moved.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, I have a motion by Mr. Worthy electronically and a second by Mr. Durrett. All right, any questions for Ms. Frank?
One quick point. We've struggled over the years with access in and out of that parking lot at Indian Creek and being able to drive from one side of the parking lot to the other. So I'm just warning you, be ready. There's a lot of people with a lot of opinions about how that ought to be done.
Yes.
So when you get into that, I'd warn whoever does this that they got to be aware of that.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Durrett?
Very aware of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Durrett?
Debbie, you spoke to this, but I'd like to understand a little bit more. We're not going to be finished with the master planning and rezoning until March, April of next year. And here we are giving approval to solicit proposals to develop something that'll be based on that plan, well, the board will consider it in July. And I'm just curious about why so early in the process are we giving you approval? Because it just feels premature to me.
Well, so, you know, the one thing about our TOD process in itself is that, you know, Jim, you've been here with us for a while. It does take a while, but the beauty for us here is that we want to make sure that all three master stations that we're conducting master planning has the opportunity, because I know one of the questions that we will likely get from the community, are we ready to advance TOD here at the station? And for me not to be able to say that our board has given us the nod to do that would put Indian Creek at I don't want to say a disadvantage, but it wouldn't be in the same standing as H.E. Holmes and Kensington. And what we're saying to the community, and we truly mean it, once we get through the master planning process and the rezoning, we are going to advance TOD, you know, issue the RFP for TOD at our stations, Kensington Station, H.E. Holmes, and Indian Creek. A lot of it is because of the interest that's been expressed to do TODs at these stations, for sure. And then we know that the time is just right. You know, with H.E. Holmes, we have the opportunity zone. We just issued an RFP for Bankhead. We're in the review right now of proposals for that. Indian Creek and H.E. Holmes, and I think Board Member Frierson said it best, the community has just been waiting for this opportunity. So I think for us is that, you know, the process itself, you know, we put out an RFP, it can be on the street for 90 days before proposals are in. We just make that decision. So in terms of timing, I think we'll be okay. You know, at the end of it, you know, we never know what we'll get into once we get out there and start planning with the community, but right now that's what we're targeting.
Would it be fair also to say that by the board making this approval in July, it could possibly whet the appetite of more development prospects who are excited about this, and they'll begin already putting together plans knowing that they'll have to modify them to whatever comes out of the master planning process?
So the approval in July, I'm lost a little bit on
to go forward and ask for proposals to do the TOD, because that's what we're giving you the authority to do. The board will, if it accepts the recommendation of
right
this
in July
committee.
of next month.
Next month.
Right.
Or tomorrow.
Right, tomorrow. Right. But but the process itself, everyone will know that we have to go through the master planning process.
Right.
Now, the rezoning itself, we'll have to see what the county schedule is and where we are in that process as to whether or not we're at a place to truly make a recommendation, because they're going to want to kind of get a sense of where will residential be, where will commercial, open space. So we have to be at a place there. So that's why I said the rezoning application itself could be a little sooner than February of 2023, just
right.
depending on where we are in the process. In terms of the putting out the RFP following the master planning, I think it's fine. I don't see a challenge.
You're taking it a place that I didn't mean for it to go. I'm through asking my question.
Okay. All right, I see there are no questions. With that, I'll call the question. Can we please vote? Resolution passes.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. Great job.
Thanks.
Last item is a briefing on the Station Rehabilitation Program by Eric Leach, our Director of Programs and Contract Management. Eric?
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Pond, Chair Floyd, committee members, Mr. Greenwood, and Mr. Renew. I just want to say thank you for allowing me the time to give you an update for the Station Rehabilitation Program. I have a relatively lengthy slideshow for you to provide information, but we'll go through it relatively quick and give you some information.
Eric, can you pull the
I'm not
mic
sure
up a
your
little bit?
microphone's
Sorry.
working.
Better? No? Test. I can hear it. Yeah, it's kind of there. I'll lean in. Sorry. I'm here to provide you Station Rehabilitation Program update. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start off with giving everybody a little bit of a reminder why we're here and what we're doing. The Station Rehabilitation Program is approximately 2 years old. We started it for reasons of the ages of our stations, some reaching 42 years, some 22 years. The advance in technologies. Our stations are starting to age. They're starting to have problems. We see them every day. Our patrons see them. We know technologies today are better. We're able to clean things better, able to last longer, so we know we have to start to replace some of these items. And our biggest reasoning is our obligation to our customers under the Amendment 15th. We have to reach out and touch all these stations and make them new and fresh for all of our patrons. And this amendment guides us through it on how we should be doing it. So that's one of our reasons for going through. Our current funding. The first half of the program is going to be using local funds, but we are looking into the second half. It's a 10-year program is proposed. The first half is 5, which is where we're in now. The second half, we're proposing to use federal funding. When we started the program years ago, there wasn't as much federal funding available, which is why we chose local funding at the time. So right now, we're looking with all the federal funding that's available today, and in the next 3 years, we're planning to make sure that we put it into the program, so if funding's available, we'll be able to use it and really apply it to the stations to help build the stations out much more. We also have a lot of external partners that have been reaching out to us. There's CIDs and communities that want to help build up their stations and add their component to it to help the residents and those businesses that are surrounding us. So we've been talking to them exclusively to make sure that if we hear them and want to have their input to the stations to really make that impact and change the station to fit that community. Next slide, please. So over the last half a year, we've sat down and we've looked at all the stations and we've categorized them based on Amendment 15 and what the stations really need. So with the guidance of Mr. Renew, we went through and did a categorical analysis of the stations. We had 10 different categories within this. This slide you see is actually a small portion of the overall slide, which will be provided to each of you electronically after the presentation, which will give you how the breakout of all the different categories were. Some of the categories that we had were age of the station or an assessment of the station of its condition. We had ridership, safety concerns and upgrades that were needed, ADA concerns that needed to be addressed because our stations are so old, the rules have changed over the years. Equity, TOD propensity that are at the stations, as well as BRTs and ARTs that are going to serve the stations as we expand. So we looked at many different categories, and through that we ranked each individual station with a score. So as each one of the categories had a score, we totaled up, and the station score, as you see on the screen here, is how they ranked, and thus giving it a tier 1, 2, or 3 ranking. So from that, we had a basic budget set for each one of those tiers after we went through and did the categorical analysis. Next slide, please. So what you see here is again, a smaller version of what you'll get in the handout that'll be sent to you, but this is really the summary of the funding for the program. So after we went through and did the categorical analysis of the stations and deemed them a tier 1, 2, or 3, each station was given a baseline budget of a $10 million for tier 1, $20 million for tier 2, $40 million for tier 3. But these were target budgets, so they're not completely set at those numbers. We're going to look at each individual station for the needs that they have based on the age, based on the use of the station by the community, and things that we need to upgrade and fix. So it's not a hard and fast 10, 20, 40. It's what's needed for the station. So as we went through the analysis, this has locked us in the order that you see. The 2 green stations that you see, number 1 and number 3, are stations that we've addressed at this point, but we are going to go back and look at those stations. They were done previous to this program. The stations you see in yellow, number 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and 10, and 18, that's actually currently in wave 1. This is the ones we're looking at right now today. The other stations that are going to be coming in wave 2 are the ones that are in brown. Those are the stations that we'll be addressing in the next wave, which we're looking in the next 2 weeks to release to the program. So overall, after we did the analysis, we see that the total budget right now in 2022 dollars is $737 million. As we progress forward, we expect that that will increase to potentially $1 billion for the overall program. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do is take the rest of the time and kind of go through each station that we have in the wave 1 to give you an idea of where we are with the station and what it's going to look like. So we're starting off with our airport station. Airport Station was originally an enhancement project probably approximately 4 years ago. This was a coordination between MARTA internal design staff and MARTA with the City of Atlanta and the Department of Aviation. Through a lot of coordination and communication over a period of 4 years, it didn't really work out, so we pulled it back into MARTA and we've made it part of the station rehabilitation program. So this station is more than just a rehab, it's an actual enhancement where we're going to completely gut the station to the walls and completely rebuild it back, including, as you can see in the lower right corner, a brand new canopy that's going to go over the top of the platform that's going to mimic the canopies that they have at the station. It's going to have the same exact type of translucent lighting on it with the same type of framing. It's actually being designed by the same company that the DOA used. So it's going to have the same look and feel so that we fit within the airport. Next slide, please. So again, the designer was MARTA. We have a CMAR, or a Construction Manager at Risk, that is part of the overall program, is New South Synergy. They've already started construction. They've started to remove some of the ceiling, and they've actually started cleaning some of the walls to prep them for a new type of painting and coatings that we're looking to do. And they're starting to begin the demolition for the second elevator that's going to serve the station. And then once that goes in, then they'll start to demo the entire station for the interior spaces on the concourse level. The canopy, we're still coordinating with the Department of Aviation to try to get some access to get into the station to bring in all the steel structure on the top on the platform, which is going to be a little bit of a ballet to try to work with patrons and the airport with what they have going on to be able to put that up. Next slide, please. So 5 Point Station, one of our busiest and most important stations in the system. The total budget, as it was, it's a Tier 3 station. It's a $50 million budget. And before, like we said, $40 million was for a Tier 3. This one has reached 50 only because it was before we did the categorization. So some of the first wave stations have a little bit more money in their budgets. This particular one is 50. Again, it's essentially 2 stations, it's 2 platforms, so it's a much larger station than the others. The designer is Perkins & Will, the CMAR is Carol Daniel Moody, and we are finalizing the GMP this week. The work order is routing through MARTA. We're expecting to be a 30-day turnaround, and we're going to start construction in August. Next slide, please. These are just some of the images we wanted to show you from Perkins & Will. A lot of these are obviously renderings, but we do actually have put some tile out at the station for patrons to see as well as us to test them. So in the upper right corner and the lower left, you can see some of the white tiles that we're proposing. If you actually see them in person, they have different sheens on them. Some have gloss, some are matte, so we're testing them. The new floor is the lower left corner of the gray tiles with the long length on them. And as you can see in the middle photo, there's sort of an area in there that looks very wood-like. That's going to be sort of a meeting place on the platforms that's going to have charging stations as well as seating for patrons. And you can see the tile on the right where we were testing different types of grout colors and as well as sheens on it. Next slide, please. HE Homes. This is one of the stations that we're most proud of right now. We started this concept quite a while ago, but we've gotten to the point that the images you're seeing is actually what we're negotiating right now. The designer is Chasm Architecture. It's a 100% DBE firm that we've been very excited to work with. They're doing an amazing job. And their partner for CMAR is Carol Daniel Moody. Right now, they are currently in full design. They've been going through a lot of concepting at the station because we really wanted to fit the community and bring the community a brand new station that actually they can be proud of and we can be proud of it too. So the renderings you're seeing is actually where they are designing right now, and we're negotiating the final pricing for it. Next slide, please. We recently had a design charrette. It was the very first charrette at passing the 30% design mark. And through that charrette, we started to pick actual materials. So some of the images you see of a brand new canopy on the top of the station, we are proposing to wrap the station with the same type of canopy that we're doing at Airport Station to bring more natural light into the platform and removing some of the glass panels that are surrounding it to let more air and light in. We are going to tie to the iVillage. We are working very closely with TOD to make sure what they're proposing is going to fit within what we're developing too. So we're communicating internally every day on all the projects that we have. Next slide, please. Indian Creek. Indian Creek, we know it's the 5 points of DeKalb County. We are making sure that that's what we're going to build. The designer is Axis Design, and again, Carol Daniel Moody. It is a $41 million Tier 3 station. We did start back in December as a Tier 1. Through a lot of coordination and communication, we went back and analyzed the station, and we found that we really needed to put more money into it to serve the community better. So what we did is we've actually gone from a Tier 1 to a Tier 2 to a Tier 3, which is where we are now. The designers have started designing through the final phase of the $41 million budget. Some of these images you do see are of some of the Tier 1 initial, but we've increased the quality of the materials, as well as we're now making a connection to the neighborhood to the north of us. We're building a bridge over the top of our 2 tracks and building a pathway to the north to connect to 2 communities that are there. There's an active adult community in the north, and there's actually single family home community that would have to drive to the station, but now with this connection they can walk. Next slide, please. So you see we've actually started some of the work out there. We've done as part of the Tier 1 work, we've already designed it while we were coordinating on the Tier 2 and 3. We've already done landscaping around the station. We've cleaned up a lot of the wrought iron railing and painted it, and we've put some new trash receptacles out there. But this will give you sort of also concepts of what the new entrance is going to look like. We have lighted walkways that will guide you in from the parking lot into the station. We're recladding a lot of the buildings. We're recladding a lot of the walls in the station, as well as the police precinct, to be able to have it stand out so the neighborhood knows we do have police presence in the station to help keep them safe. Next slide, please. So as part of station rehabilitation, we've broken it into 2 pieces. There's the main rehabilitation work, which is the work of the stations to rejuvenate it and make it fresh and new. But we've also had early work packages. We recognize that a lot of our stations have a lot of issues that needed to be addressed faster than when we were bringing on the A&Es and the CMARs. So what we did is we had a lot of design work done internally by the MARTA infrastructure staff. So once the CMARs came on board, we were able to hand them a lot of the packages that needed to be addressed so that the patrons wouldn't have to wait for the program to design and then start construction. So these are some of the examples that we started to work with. At College Park, we recognized that a lot of the external brick pavers were missing. And in the past, we've tried to cover them up with concrete, or we have cones in them, and patrons have to maneuver around them. So we decided we have to replace them completely and totally. So you can see a lot of the progress that we've made out there. We've torn out a lot of the pavers in the first 2 waves of 4 waves of replacement. We've gotten down to the base concrete and found that a lot of it is failing, so we're tearing it out. We're going to rebuild this to last for 40 years. So you can see we're putting in all new concrete base. There'll be new concrete topping. As well as a fare barrier fencing installation. There were some fare evaders that were jumping from the concourse level down to the platform to not pay fare. So we actually put up a stainless steel fencing to stop evasion. And if they want to climb over that, they might get a little hurt, but we don't expect anybody to climb over that fencing. It's well high enough. HE Homes. We have a very long bus entrance into HE Homes, and there was a large pothole, essentially, the width of 2 buses. Our operators were slowing around to go around that, and all the patrons could see it. So we decided to replace the entire concrete drive from the station all the way out to the entrance in the street. So those pictures you see are actually the replacement of the first half. We're getting ready to pour the second half in the next couple of weeks. And same thing at North Avenue bus entrance. We had a big, giant open hole in our entrance. We replaced it and put it back in place in less than a month, and it's now serving the patrons well for a nice, easy entrance into the overall program. We have other pieces and parts that we're addressing throughout the system as we go out and look at them and getting reports from whether it's our operators or our patrons or any of our staff to address as fast as we can. Next slide, please. So one of the important projects I know that everybody's asking about is the Smart Restroom Program. The Smart Restroom Program years ago was part of JOC, it was part of facilities, but essentially we've adopted into the Station Rehabilitation Program. This is a restrooms for the public, essentially. It has a smart element to it that when a patron comes up to the restroom, there is a camera facing out, as well as a microphone that someone is watching 24/7 when the stations are open. They just want to confirm that only one person is going into the restrooms, so we don't have to have a station agent or a police officer constantly posted at the restroom to make sure there's nothing going on in there. So you can see some images in the right side of the screen of what the final restrooms look like. We've done a prototype years ago at Lindbergh and 2 other stations in the system to make sure it worked. And so now we're revitalizing 4 stations in the system now, and the status is they're being closed up right now. All the plumbing has been put in, electricals, and we're tying them into the network for the camera and the mic. But what we're also doing is we're actually purchasing the remaining 68 restrooms, one purchase of all the materials to do the bathrooms within the program. So what we can do, instead of doing pieces and parts in one at a time, we're going to take the designs of the remaining restrooms, give them to the 6 A&Es we have in the program, have them do it in a batch design, and then give them to 1 or 2 of the CMARs and do them all. So the patrons don't have to wait for the program to come online station by station by station. So we're going to try to fast track this as quickly as we can to get it out to the patrons because we know they need restrooms. Next slide, please. So final thoughts, just going through. We're getting ready to move into our wave 2 of stations. We've looked at the program over the last 2 years and what we've done, and we really do need to have a balance between operation and the construction. One of the things we recently are doing this Friday is we're standing up a station shutdown team. We recognize that a lot of the work that we're doing in the stations is going to impact not just the patrons, but we are going to have to try to impact operations as least as we can, but if we can do it, it will make the contract work go much quicker. So we are standing up this team to really look at the viability of closing a station down for an extended period of time, but also making sure that we keep the patronage moving through the system with bus bridges, mobility bridges, and what we need to do to get them through, even though we understand we're impacting them. The new station coming on board faster will be much better for them and actually save on budget as well. We're continuing to work with our MARTA internal family. We work very closely with TOD specifically because we know that they're going to have lots of impact at our stations. We work with Art and Transit. We're obviously working with safety, and we're working very closely with our operations. We meet with our zone managers every other week in a large internal meeting that we have to go over the status of each and every station so they know what's going on, so they're not surprised in the field as we start new construction. Our external stakeholder outreach. We've been working very closely, as we said, with a lot of patronage, a lot of elected officials, and as well as other groups that want to come into the stations. City of College Park, we recently did a presentation to them for their station. They want to have a lot of input into the station. So we recognize in our Wave 2, we want to talk to a lot of external stakeholders to ask them what they need at the station, what they want at the station. So we plan to have both with governmental officials, but also the patrons that use the station to talk to them about what's needed. And the last part is to set the correct project budgets. As we said, even though we have the tier 1, 2, and 3, that we've put the budgets in at 10, 20, and 40, we really want to evaluate each station on a one-by-one need of what really needs to be in the station. And if it's additional cost, then we'll look and see if we can do it and make it happen. Because we know a lot of our stations need some basic fixing. For example, Lenox has a lot of water intrusion through the skylights. Well, that's not a rehab, that's a fixing. So we're going to fix the water intrusion first and then rehab the station to make sure it meets what the community needs. Next slide. And that completes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. I just think it's a great compliment to yourself and the MARTA team to move forward. This is a very large program, this station rehabilitation program, and the priorities you set in place are smart, and you have a process in place to execute and stay within the project controls. So just wanted to point that out. Any questions for Mr. Leach?
If you could, over here, if you could please send me or have somebody send me the details about what is being done at Lenox, I would greatly appreciate it. That's within the Community Improvement District that I run, and I just want to understand what's happening there so we can communicate, we can look for opportunities to be force multiplier there if possible. So
absolutely. So because of the water intrusion, we actually delayed the design. So we're actually starting design right now. So it would be a perfect time if we wanted to sit and talk about what we could do to work jointly on.
Terrific. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Leach? With that, that ends that item on the agenda. Are there any other matters for this committee?
Thank you.
If not, we'll adjourn the meeting.
order for Thursday, June 30th, 2022. The first item on the agenda is approval of the May 26, 2022 Operations and Safety Committee minutes. They're on your screens. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? We will call the question. Please vote. And the minutes are approved. Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of new and remanufactured transmissions and overhaul repairs, IFB B46990. Mr. Chafin.
Good morning,
Welcome.
Chairman Worthy.
Good morning.
Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. Agenda item number 2 is resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of the new and remanufactured transmissions and overhaul and repairs, IFB B46990. Next slide, please. This is a reoccurring contract for transmission replacements, and it will supersede a current contract due to no FTA language in the current contract. So this new contract allows FTA up to 80% reimbursement. There were 3 respondents that submitted bids over 2 different line items. And the new contract will include procurement, repair, overhaul for all MARTA bus transmissions. It also includes an extended warranty that will go up to 4 years. This has been a very lucrative partnership in the past that has yielded great results with warranty and recall abilities that has helped MARTA in the years before. Next slide, please. The Midlife Overhaul program will be for 4 years with no options, and this will support our buses going into the Midlife program. It's eligible for FTA up to 80% on this portion, and there was 2 respondents. One was valid and one was invalid due to an incomplete bid. Next slide, please. The transmission repair and overhaul portion of it is for buses outside the Midlife program. This is not eligible for reimbursement, and it's also for a 4-year option. There was 2 respondents. One was deemed incompetent or not competent because of the dealer warranty portion. They were not a valid dealer that could make our warranties last longer. Next slide. There was a 5% Dbe Goal on this contract, which was very progressive because the previous contracts that had no Dbe due to all the technical needs to make sure we're getting the specific transmissions that our buses take. Even though that was put in there, we were able to get 2% on a good faith effort using transportation of the transmissions to our locations. For the rebuild program, we're looking at W.W. Williams for $6,971,132. For the overhaul outside the Midlife, we're looking at W.W. Williams for $315,000 even. The Office of Bus Maintenance respectfully requests authorization for the resolution to enter into a contract with W.W. Williams for a total amount of $7,286,132. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chafin. I'll entertain a motion to approve. And a second. The resolution has been moved and approved. May open it up to any questions of Mr. Chafin. No questions? All right. Then we'll call for the
Sir.
vote. Oh, sorry.
Just one quick question. You mentioned the DBE goal of 5%, and previously there was none.
Correct.
So how did we arrive? Do you know why there wasn't one previously?
I'm not 100% sure on the previous, but Ms. Nash will be able to tell us.
The reason that there wasn't one previously is this is one of those contracts where the work has to be done by certified Allison mechanics to work on those particular transmissions, and in order for the warranty to be any good. So there just wasn't much opportunity that we could find for a DBE to do. But thinking harder about it this time, we realized that the transmissions had to be transported somewhere. So we came up with that as the opportunity, and which is where we came up with the 5%, which was a bit aggressive. We didn't know at the time when we put it out what would be the mode of transporting the transmissions, but ultimately the company that's been awarded the bid, they actually went out to the DBE community, took in some proposals, and did come up with a DBE company for transporting the transmissions, but that amount only came to about 2%. So we knew we were a bit aggressive with the 5%, but we just didn't have enough details to actually make the percentage more specific.
And what is the certification in?
When does the certification end?
Yeah, what is the title of the certification? Certified to?
The certification for the transmission.
Are you talking about what their qualifications are?
Yes.
Well, it's part of an ASC program, so there is a transmission certification, but Allison will only certify dealers, very specific dealers, so it's hard to actually become an Allison warranty provider. We've looked at it on seeing how we can become an Allison warranty provider in-house, but Allison does not give out warranty or vendor status very often. So it's something we're going to keep an eye on and see if they change their minds in the future. But right now, there's no way for our techs to become certified through Allison.
Okay, and that was my question. Was there a way, well, my path to the question was, there a way internally for us to become certified?
Right. We've been watching really closely because that would be an end goal for us because we would like to be more self-sustaining. But right now, it is not fruitful.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Worthy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any other questions of Mr. Chafin? We'll call for the vote. And the resolution passes. Agenda item number 3 is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of diesel exhaust fluid, IFB B48662A, and Mr. Chafin remains. We'll turn it over to you again.
Yes, sir. So this is agenda item number 3, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for procurement of diesel exhaust fluid B48662A. Next slide, please. We'll go over these bullet points throughout the slides. What is diesel exhaust fluid? Why do we need it? The bids and the request for approval. Next slide, please. Diesel exhaust fluid, which is also commonly known as DEF, is 32.5% urea, 67.5% ionized water, and it's necessary to help remove the harmful byproducts of diesel engines going through the exhaust, so the soot, and making it cleaner for the environment. Next slide, please. As you can see, the EPA has been working on this since 1970s, trying to clean up the quality of the air. 2010 is when it was actually implemented with the DEF fluid for all medium and heavy duty engines, for diesel engines, and that affects 166 of our buses and 18 of our non-revenue vehicles. Next slide, please. We had 5 potential bidders. 2 of them did not complete the bid form. Our third bidder completed all the necessary requirements, and they're meeting the 5% Dbe Goal efforts with the transportation of the fluid to the facilities. Next slide, please. The Office of Bus Maintenance respectfully requests authorization for the resolution to enter into a contract with McPherson Oil Companies in the amount of $540,600. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chafin. I will entertain a motion and a second for agenda item number 3. It has been duly moved and seconded. Are there any questions for Mr. Chafin on this matter? Mr. Mullis?
Thank you, Chairman. So I assume that there is some petroleum elements in this fluid. Is that correct?
No, sir. This fluid's actually environmentally safe. It's just, like I said, urea, which is, it turns to ammonia when it has heat applied to it, and then deionized water. So it's actually does not require any kind of containment efforts, and it's not harmful to the environment.
So there's no petroleum won't be exposed to any price increase or anything like that in the future based upon?
It's hard on today's climate to determine if there's going to be any kind of price increases, but it should be very minor just because, like you said, it's not relying on the petroleum base, but it goes by supply and demand also, because all your big rigs and transportation trucks have to take this DEF as well.
And we're locking this price in for 3 years, is that correct?
It's 5 years, correct? 5 years.
So we're locking the price in, so the price what we have now is what we're going to have with some escalations.
Yes,
5
sir.
years down the road.
Yes, sir.
Great job.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Chafin? We will call for the vote. The resolution passes. Thank you, Mr. Chafin.
Thank you, sir.
Agenda item number 4 is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of non-revenue vehicles, RFPPP 50146, utilizing the State of Georgia contract. Mr. Morrow.
Good morning, Mr. Worthy, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. I am Anthony Morrow, and I'm here to talk about non-revenue vehicles this morning. I'm utilizing the State of Georgia contract. This is going to be a request for a price proposal. Next slide, please. We have a brief discussion about our current fleet status, vehicle availability, our transmission to zero emissions that I'm very excited about, the cost savings that these we will achieve, our vehicle replacement, and then a request. Next slide, please. Just very briefly, here's our current vehicle status. We have 448 vehicles, with 390 of those being less than 2015. We replace our police vehicles normally at 100,000 miles and support vehicles at 150,000 miles, or any vehicle over 10 years old. Next slide, please. As you know, we are still dealing with some of the issues of the pandemic, but things are getting better from the manufacturers. To put it to that perspective, we still have an order for 4 police Explorers that were due last year, but we still have not received those, but I did get a commitment from Ford that they are building those now. With that said, these listed here are the vehicles that are available on the State of Georgia contract. There's everything from the Ford Explorers to the Escapes to the Kia Rios to even some Toyota Camrys. But I was not able to get, firm commitments from all the manufacturers other than Ford about what vehicles they will be building and that we will be able to purchase this year. Next slide, please. So with that said, we looked at how can we get better and how can we be in line with the whole world going green and also be in line with MARTA initiative with buying the electric buses. How can we be in line with that with our non-revenue vehicles? And looking at that, I've talked to other different departments and seeing what their needs are. And we did an analysis between the Ford Edge, the Escape, and then the Escape plug-in hybrid. As you can see, the Escape plug-in hybrid, the annual fuel cost is a total of about $1,000, doing an average of 37 miles per year. 37 miles per day, that's the average commuting back and forth or going to the different facilities. So looking at that and then doing the research with the Environmental Protection Agency of fueleconomy.com, fueleconomy.gov, we think that the Ford Escape plug-in hybrid is going to be the best choice for our fleet vehicles. Next slide, please. Also with that, talking to the chief and to the police, Ford, they make a hybrid police vehicle. Now, this is not a plug-in hybrid vehicle, but what this vehicle does, it has a lithium-ion battery that when the gas engine, it charges the battery. So when a police vehicle is sitting at maybe one of the stations or doing an idle, the engine actually turns off and goes totally on the lithium-ion battery. So there'll be some cost savings there. Next slide, please. With that said, The annual cost savings that we go with the plug-in hybrid, we're about $2,200 per year over our current vehicles that we have. This is analysis that was done against our current Ford Explorers. With the police vehicles, even though it's not a complete plug-in hybrid, there is a cost savings of roughly about $650 per year by going to the hybrid police vehicles. Next slide, please. With that, we're going to be buying 40 vehicles, and we're going to be replacing vehicles from 2007 all the way up to 2017. These are the vehicles that we plan on replacing and also adding some additional vehicles for our safety department. Next slide, please. With that said, we're going to be purchasing 30 plug-in hybrids, for our fleet vehicles, and 10 hybrid vehicles for our police department, for a total of 40 vehicles. Next slide, please. So with that said, the Office of Maintenance, we request the authorization for $1,342,550 for our non-revenue vehicles. Next slide, please. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. I will entertain a motion in a second on agenda item number 4. It has been duly moved and seconded. Mr. Morrow, I have a quick question, and this we may want to call the chief up for this. I know the answer to the question, but I want to put it on the record. There is no diminished capabilities for police activity with a hybrid. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Yes.
And can the lithium-ion battery run your computers, your radios, your emergency lights?
And yes, that is the main purpose for the lithium-ion battery. When a police vehicle is sitting idle, when a police vehicle is sitting idle, the radios, all the other support equipment is run by a lithium-ion battery. But the vehicle actually looks at the state of charge of the battery, and if it gets below a certain level, it would turn on the engine to recharge the battery.
That's exactly what I want to hear. Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Chairman. Quick question about the purchase of these vehicles. Is this an actual purchase or lease of the new vehicles?
It is an actual purchase of the vehicles. I am in talks with Enterprise about doing a lease analysis. We have not gotten to the point yet to where they have given me the numbers that we like, for the leasing of the vehicles. But that is something that we are actively looking at, and maybe later on in the year, we look at maybe doing a lease of vehicles, because a lot of our fleet vehicles, we're not putting a lot of miles on them. So there might be some opportunities for that and some cost savings to lease a vehicle for a year or two and then give it back to them, and then they sell it and then actually get a check back from them, or basically, lease the vehicle for free. So that's still analysis that we're working on right now.
Got it. And the vehicles we're replacing, are we selling those vehicles or getting some money?
Yes, we sell those on publicsurplus.com to the highest bidder.
And is that the amount that we make from the sale of the vehicles we own, is that going towards the purchase of new
No,
vehicles?
that money goes back into the general fund.
Okay.
I would love for it to come back to bus maintenance, but that's not something that I've been able to.
That's a question for the next committee.
Yes, I would love for the yes, because so far this year, I've sold 10 buses and at least 15 older non-revenue vehicles. But that money just goes back to the general fund. But if we can get it to come back to bus maintenance, that's more money I can use for vehicles.
Yeah, sure. That'll be your next pitch. All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. Morrow, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is purchased under the kind of massive state Department of Administrative Services contract where the state's buying all these vehicles for State Patrol, GBI.
It's the same contract the City of Atlanta, the whole state of Georgia uses, so the pricing is already set. The Dbe requirements and everything is already taken care of.
Mr. Mullis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again, Mr. Morrow. I see that we're purchasing a little less than 10% of our fleet on an annual basis. Is that for this purchase?
Yes.
What impact has the increased fuel cost had on your budget? I know we hedged the natural gas, and we also hedged the diesel fuel at about 30% of our portfolio. Mm-hmm. What percentage of your fuel cost has been impacted in a negative way from what you budgeted to what you're experiencing now?
The diesel fuel costs have been all over the place. Far as the non-revenue vehicles, we have not seen that big of an impact because the non-revenue vehicle fuel usage is not our main usage. The fuel usage for the main user is our diesel buses. And when I first did analysis for the fuel, it was at $2 per gallon what we was paying for the diesel fuel, because we don't pay, all the regulatory taxes that everybody pay. And as of earlier this month, we're still running around, I think, $2.60 a gallon, which is still below what the general public is paying, but we have seen an increase in that.
And that's on, to be clear, that's on diesel fuel, is that correct?
Correct, and gasoline also.
And gasoline.
I'm sorry? Okay, unleaded went up about 25 cents.
So unleaded is up 25%
Yes.
from what you budgeted?
Yes,
Okay.
25 cents.
Okay. So just an observation.
Yes, sir.
Because we are in an inflated period for refined products, and would it be something that we might want to expedite the transition away from, petroleum and maybe to the hybrids a little faster? We would like to step up the pace of that.
That's one. Yeah, this is step one, buying the plug-in hybrids for the fleet vehicles. Step two, Ford actually makes a totally electric utility van, and that's something that we're looking at for the next purchase for our facilities department, is to go totally electric with them. So yes, we are trying to expedite and move, but we do have a substantial amount of investment in our current fleet that we just can't just totally get rid of. That just is not going to put us in a better financial situation if we don't use those vehicles, at least get, our value out of the vehicles before we move to the hybrid and totally electric.
And when do you think you can be fully over to a hybrid fleet or a plug-in fleet?
I expect it to be fully hybrid or totally electric within the next 5 years.
5 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Blakely, I saw your light on. Is it now off?
It's off.
All right, perfect. Any other questions of Mr. Morrow? Comments? All right, we'll call for the vote. The resolution passes. Thank you, Mr. Morrow.
Thank you.
The final item on the agenda is a briefing by Mr. Hecht on rail operations performance initiatives. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning, Chairman Worthy, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee.
Oh, yeah. I think they're about to say that this is your first presentation to the board.
Definitely want to acknowledge that.
We're going to fire up all the tough questions.
Yes.
Great, bring them on.
All right.
I'm ready.
Mr. Hecht is our Deputy Chief Mechanical Officer. He's been with us, I think, about a couple months now, right?
Yep, mid-April.
Right, and he'll get a little bit more of his bio in a moment, but just wanted to welcome him to the board.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Again, pleasure to be here. I'd like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Daniel Hecht. I'm the Deputy Chief Mechanical Officer. I'm currently running the rail operations mode here at MARTA. Prior to being here in mid-April, I was with the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority in San Jose, California for about 13 years, working in a variety of roles in bus and rail maintenance and engineering. Prior to my work in public transit, I was with Union Pacific Railroad in Los Angeles as an operations manager, and then briefly in Omaha, Nebraska at their headquarters. I have a degree in mechanical engineering. I am a licensed mechanical engineer in Georgia and in California, and I have a master's degree in transportation management, specializing in public transit. So it's a pleasure to meet you all. I'd like to direct your attention to agenda item number 5, which is a briefing on rail operations performance and initiatives. Next slide, please. I'll be giving quick updates on ridership, on-time performance, railcar maintenance, maintenance of way, and some updates on 2 major projects and initiatives. That's our train control and SCADA upgrade and our station management initiative, which we are really excited about. Next slide, please. So the graph here shows our ridership by month for fiscal year 22 to date, which is the blue line at the top of the graph. The dotted turquoise line at the bottom of the graph is our ridership for the previous fiscal year. As you can see, ridership is up for FY22, which is a great thing. We are rebounding from the loss of riders due to the COVID pandemic, and although we are not at pre-pandemic ridership levels yet, Our increase in ridership and our positive forecast shown by the red line indicates that we are trending in the right way, getting our riders back on our trains. Next slide, please. This graph shows on-time performance by month for FY22 to date. Again, the blue line is our current fiscal year, and the dotted turquoise line is the previous fiscal year. Our goal for on-time performance is 95%. And as you can see, we are consistently meeting this goal with the exception of January 2022, in which we had a large number of staffing issues which affected our ability to put trains in revenue service. Next slide, please. Two of the main metrics that railcar maintenance uses to determine performance are the mean distance between failures, which are NTD reportable, and that's measured in miles, and the mean distance between service interruptions, which are also measured in miles. Our goal here is 23,000 miles. As you can see, these are trending relatively flat, and in full honesty, this trend is likely to continue until we have our replacement fleet in revenue service. The major drivers of these failures are generally door and brake system faults. And it's not to say that we're inactive on these issues. Rather, we have a couple of really robust programs that address rail, door, and brake system faults. But this is indicative of a fleet that is aging, a fleet that utilizes outdated technology, and a fleet that is really hard to buy parts for considering the age of the fleet. Next slide, please. Maintenance of way is vital to our operations. And though you rarely see these systems and equipment in the public view, maintenance of way provides the backbone to our rail network. This includes our track, train control, signaling, power distribution, infrastructure, and all the related equipment. Shown here are the maintenance of way delays by month, measured by count of trip delays. Delays are primarily up due to three major causes over the past 4 months, and you see that in February, April, and May. In May, we had a broken track joint, which caused a substantial number of delays to revenue service as we had to perform emergency repairs to the track system. And in February and April, we had some major ATC or automatic train control delays. These were primarily issues with track circuits, the train control systems, and some switches that were out of correspondence. Note that these are relatively rare events that are being mitigated through two major projects that we're going on right now. That's the track rehabilitation program. We're currently in TR4, and our train control and SCADA upgrade project. Next slide, please. Speaking of the train control upgrade project, I'll give you a quick update on how that's going. This is a major system upgrade to our train control and monitoring systems. It's utilizing Alstom technology, and its upgrade is nearing completion with an estimated finish in mid-2023 with full acceptance. These are all of the safety critical components to our train control system. That's train control and monitoring, the field alarms such as fire alarms and elevator alarms, third rail power shutdown, the tunnel ventilation and fan systems, and upgrades to our integrated operations control center as well. And just like the maintenance of way systems, these items are locked away in back rooms, hidden from the public view, and you all will never see them, but they are absolutely vital to the safe and efficient operation of our rail system. Next slide, please. And lastly, I'd like to give a quick update on our station management initiative. And this is something we are really excited about. This is a customer-focused culture shift that enhances the rider's experience as viewed from a customer perspective. We've reorganized our key staff into zones of responsibility. We've reset the bar for safety and customer care, and ultimately this strengthens our community bond. We're doing this through our eyes-on, hands-on, game-on approach. Eyes-on. We have every level of staff from collie all the way down out in the stations looking at our station management from the customer perspective. That means we are out there looking at things just as the customer would see when they board our trains. Hands-on. Just like in this picture, hands-on is our staff out in the stations taking action to keep our stations clean and safe. We have teams that are dedicated to cleaning. We have teams dedicated to station lighting. You can see some nice lighting upgrades in the picture on the right there. And we have teams focused on customer care. And lastly, game on. We showcase these improvements to the community, and we continually engage our customers in a process of continuous improvement. Next slide, please. With that, I'd like to thank you and take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Hecht. Welcome again to the authority. Any questions of Mr. Hecht on this issue? Mr. Pond?
I've got one question. I want the very short version, not the long version, but that SCADA control train control system is probably one of the most, if not the most complex systems we have in the whole MARTA network. When this new system comes on board, you have a changeover, and I know there are processes to make sure if the changeover works and the system doesn't shut down, but do they implement this in bits and pieces? I mean, when you cut this thing off and put the new one on, if it doesn't work, you still have to run the trains.
Yeah, generally, most of the system is already up and running. So we've been in a phased approach with implementation and testing. So we're 95% there. Really, we're in project closeout. George, would you like to add anything?
Yes, Mr. Pond, we've been getting beneficial use out of this new train control system since 2017.
Thanks, George. Mr. First?
Yeah, I just have one question. I know with all the station rehabilitation projects that we got going on these platforms, I would imagine that it would probably affect some of these performance matrix, the ones like maybe on time, because maybe there's some situations where they need the space in order to do what they need to, and it's close to where the rails are, the tracks run. So I guess my question is, as I look at this on-time performance matrix, as it ebbs and flows, I would expect that there would probably be some understanding when it doesn't reach the goals that are set because of all these things that's happening. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Anytime we don't meet the on-time performance, we do an in-depth analysis as to why, and we get down to the root cause of, was it a track system? Was it caused by trespassers, wayside, you name it? And we do a deep dive on every single instance where on-time performance falls below our threshold.
Okay. Well, that's good. I just want to make sure that as we begin to measure this, understanding the impact of all these other things, I don't want anybody to feel like they're being penalized because they have to make some adjustments because of what's going to happen on these platforms, and all that is going to be disruptive in some way. But I'm sure we'll find a way to work through it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we go through these major capital projects that do affect revenue service, when
Yeah.
we might close down half of a station for
Yeah.
rehab, we're going to be doing some robust planning so that the impact to the customers is minimal.
Okay.
And we can try to maintain our on-time performance to the best ability possible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Other matters in your board documents, you have FY '22 April Operations and Safety Department KPIs for your information. And with no other items to come before the Operations and Safety Committee, we will stand adjourned.
Mr. Chair, we're going to Thank you. We have such a long agenda today. We want to go ahead and get started. So I'd like to call this Business Management Committee meeting to order for Thursday, June 30th, 2022. The first item on the agenda is approval of the May 26, 2022 Business Management Committee meeting minutes. Are those on the screen there? Okay. All right. Do I have any changes to it? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'm not getting an opportunity to vote. I'll vote yes, but I have nothing to give me an opportunity to vote.
Okay. We'll get you connected. So can you just mark Ms. Harder as in favor of the minutes? Okay, all right, good. All right, the minutes have been approved, all right? Thank you. There you are. Okay. Thank you. First item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in a contractual authorization for professional services for a consultant for 4DX implementation, LOA L38628, Calvin Wright, interim AGM Human Resource. You have the floor.
Good morning, Chairman Frierson, Vice Chair Durrett, and other distinguished board members, Mr. Greenwood and Mr. Srinath. I'm here to speak to the resolution authorization for contract extension with the Franklin Covey element tied into leadership development training, contract number L38628. Next slide, please. Resolution to authorize the extension of this particular contract. The Department of Human Resources, within our organization, the Office of Learning and Development, is requesting the authorization to extend the existing contract with Franklin Covey, which provides training curriculum and training programs that support programming with MARTA's Leadership Development Academy. The existing contract will expire in December of 2022. The Office of Learning and Development recommends that we maintain this particular service through Franklin Covey, and we're asking for an extension of a three-year contract, and this will ensure that the continuity of how our leaders are developed with MARTA and will eliminate the need to retrain the existing leadership workforce on a different leadership development platform. Next slide, please. Professional services. During the course of this particular use of Franklin Covey, we've been able to present over 10,000 training hours to leadership. It's focused on the overall development. It focused on helping increase the level for coaching, building trust, all on diversity, and improving employee engagement in many other areas. And we recently utilized this particular training during the COVID-19 incident. We worked with our leaders, helped develop communication skills and communication styles that was required to deal with a very sensitive issue such as this during the course of the day-to-day activities within our workforce. We also had to deal with teleworking, which was a new element on a higher scale. So there was a whole different method of communication you had to engage in order to communicate with those individuals properly. We also had to deal with this whole idea of a hybrid work environment. And we utilized the platform through Franklin Covey to do that. And that's how Franklin Covey is a very relevant organization. They move with what's going on within the current economic environment and also what's happening in the business environment. And we currently are utilizing it within the Bus Operation Leadership Development Program. And basically, the information that we're receiving back from that particular group is turned to be very, very effective in providing good skills and skill upgrading with those particular individuals. And by retaining the program, this will allow us to establish consistency, the proper methodology, a similar methodology going across to all of our MARTA leaders. It's very reliable. It has uniformity within the process, and it's a consistent method of going forward with leadership development and training. And this is the quality service that is provided to us through the Franklin Covey tool. Next slide, please. The proposed contract information is as detailed here. We got an action for a 3-year extension for a total cost of $261,000, and is funded by our local operating budget. And as you can see, year 1, we're looking at 500 licenses, and 2 and 3 also, and at a cost of $174 per person. One of the leading service providers in this space is LinkedIn Learning, and their cost per hour is $225. So you can see we're getting a good negotiated deal on going at $174 to provide for our particular leadership. And so, next slide, please. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Wright. Appreciate that. Can I get a motion and a second? Okay, it's been moved and it's been second. All right, any questions for Mr. Wright?
Ms. Hardage, I don't think you meant to vote no.
Any questions from the board members? Okay, hearing none, can I get a call the question for the resolution? All right, the resolution has carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Appreciate it very much.
All right, thank you.
The last item on the agenda is just for other matters. It's FY 2022 April financial highlights and financial performance indicators. This is for information only. Ask the board members to kind of open that up and take a look at those trends and some of the activities that we have report-wise concerning the financial perspective of our current performance. Are there any other questions? Mr. Rod Millis.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Rod Friesen, question about the financial highlights.
Yeah.
A couple things. First of all, it looks like our sales tax revenue is up again this year. And
That's correct. Yeah.
looks like we're rounding the, we will probably do a little better than $150 million surplus good at the end of the fiscal year. Is that a fair assessment?
I'm cautiously optimistic. One thing that's missing in the financing highlights would be the year-end adjustments once we complete the audit, specifically with respect to our pension plan funding. So that can change the results somewhat, and we wouldn't know that till sometime mid or end of August.
Okay. Another question is, I've noticed that our open positions have increased a little bit from March to April. We were at 665 in March. We're at 692 in April. This is a question for Kali. Has that had an impact on performance? And can you give me a breakdown of those open positions?
I can't give you a breakdown off the top of my head, but I can say that the vast majority of our vacancies are in the frontline operating segments. Has it had an impact on performance? No. In terms of actual numbers, what you're seeing there is largely a representation of us processing the paperwork to register that a lot of our folks are now inactive and are off the payroll. So the last time I checked, which was about 2 days ago, we were at 96% of required bus operations people, like in terms of frontline operators, drivers. But there's a large segment of those that are unavailable for work. So they're on our books. What you're seeing there in that vacancy number is a reconciliation of who's actually available to do the work.
So the vast majority would be bus drivers, is what I just heard.
Yeah.
And what you also said that forward-looking, the number will be better for May. Is that what I just heard?
For May?
May and June. Well, we will have less vacant positions open.
That is absolutely the goal. We're working towards that. And in terms of actual people available to do the work, that will be far better than what you're seeing now.
Okay, and we'll start seeing that trend line go down in the May and June numbers.
Yeah, that's our intention. There's still a significant amount of uncertainty around. For example, our recruitment drives are showing a great deal of success. The question is retention and how long will people remain. But barring any unforeseen circumstances, yes, we will continue to see that progress.
Okay. And the last thing I want to talk about is the CNG number for April. We're a little over budget, a lot over budget on that number.
That is correct, but if you look at the year-to-date number, we're still at or slightly below budget. Because the first 6 months, we were definitely well below the budget. In the last few months of the fiscal year, we are trending a little bit higher than the budget. But overall for the year, and this is the last day of the fiscal year, we would be at or pretty much below the budget.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board member? Okay, we're hearing none, then I'll call the meeting adjourned. All right, thank you.